Have you ever been to a networking event and you did not want to be there and you were a little bit pissed because you were forced to be there? So you may have been or are currently employed by someone else and they gave you a date and they let you know that you need to be somewhere and you have to stay a certain amount of time and you didn't like it. Or have you ever gone to a social event? Like you've just been invited by a friend and you know where you're going was somewhere that you didn't particularly know most of the people except the person that invited you. And you knew you couldn't stick to them all night long. Okay. I call that networking anxiety for some people. And let's have a conversation about it right now. Because networking does not have to be as hard as we make it feel for ourselves. So in the next not too long, I'm going to have a conversation and teach you how to master the art of networking. Now, when it comes to networking, people say your net worth is your network. It's based on your network. And I believe it to be true. I can't remember who said this quote. It's not mine. You are the accumulation of the 5 people around you. So whomever you have around you, you'll be like them. You'll do similar things. You know, if it's people around you who are negative or always complaining, you'll find that you'll start to be picky and complaining. If you're around people who are always saying things like, okay, what's next? That's great. Like, how are you stretching? What are you doing to grow? You'll find you acquire that mindset as well. But the question is this: how do I build my network? And the answer is this: you have to take yourself outside of your comfort zone. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to go to quote unquote networking events, whether they're called that or not, or social events where you don't know anyone. So what I want to talk about are a handful of tips to make networking, and we're going to use that word for now. You can call it whatever you want. I'm essentially talking about going into a situation or a setting where you don't know a lot of people or you know no one at all. Here's how to master this art. And the tips that I'm going to share have nothing to do with if you are an introvert or if you are an extrovert or if you are, I believe it's an ambivert, which is a mix of the two of them. Correct me if I'm wrong. If I said it incorrectly, just let me know in the comment area. But let's get started. Here's the first thing I want you to think about. When you're networking, a lot of people believe it's about collecting contacts. And that's not necessarily true, right? It depends on why you're going. You might be going because your work made you go, mandated that you go, or it might be a social event that, you want to get out. You have not been out in months. I know that can be a lot of us. We haven't been out in months and someone has invited us out. So we want to go out to that social event. And you get there, you might think it's going to be a small group of friends. But when you get there, you're like, okay, where are the friends that I know? And I don't know about you. Have you ever walked into a space and you've looked around and you know nobody? And your little mind says to you, you know what, if I left right now, no one would know. And you're kind of back and forth. You haven't walked through the doorway just yet to enter the event. And you're like, I could just go, I could just go and I know for me, I'm like, I could grab some dessert and go home. But nonetheless, you're pushing yourself. You're saying, no, I'm going to go. I'm going to stay a little while. So the decision is yes, you're going to stay. Here's what it's about. It's not about collecting contacts. It's really about creating genuine connections. The first reality I want you to walk with is this. When you go to a networking event, you do not have to talk to everyone. If you've ever heard someone say, well, you have to work the room, you don't have to do a damn thing. You get to enjoy yourself in that setting. And some people love crowds and some people don't. But as crowded as a networking event is, it doesn't mean you have to be a part of that crowd. Now, you want to focus on creating genuine connections. So we are going to touch on how you can actually do that in a way that it lowers your stress. I call it stress-free for me, and it might be stress-free for you, but a lot of people find it a stressful situation. So here's what you want to do. Number one, Stop trying to be this interesting person that has all these interesting things about them. I want you to stop focusing on being interesting and focus on being interested in the other person. Now, here's a little hack that I teach my clients all the time. You want to be the person who's interested in the other person. And the reality is, people love to talk about themselves. Now, if you're feeling high stress, here's what you want to do. You want to be the person who asks the questions. You want to be the person who leads the conversation. Now, let me tell you why. If you are the person asking the questions, you do the least amount of speaking. Now, let me layer it with this. If you are the person asking the right questions, you do the least amount of speaking. Like, that is the literal hack. If you don't like to talk a lot, you ask the interesting questions so they can do all the talking. Now, you might be saying, well, Karen, I hear you, but I don't know. Like, that's my problem. I don't know what type of questions to ask. So I want to talk about close-ended and open-ended questions. Close-ended questions is when you ask someone a question and they give you a short response. Is this your first time here? Yes. Is this your first time here? No. Then the conversation stops, right? Do you like cherries? Yes. Do you like cherries? No. That is a closed answered question. I need you to ask open-ended, right? Sorry, closed-ended question, open-ended question. So an open-ended question is when you ask a question and it allows the other person to talk for a longer period of time. For example, instead of, I'm in Toronto. Are you from Toronto? Yes, no, right? That's a closed-ended question. Now you would say, how far are you coming from? And how long did it take you to get here? So instead of yes, no, oh, I'm coming all the way from Oakville and it took me an hour and a half. There was a lot of traffic. Do you see how I'm doing all the talking? So you want to start to ask open-ended questions. So if it's going to be a yes, no answer, you stay away from that. And one of the easiest ways for you to conjure up open-ended questions is be interested in the other person. Like, have a look at the other person. What do you want to know about them? No one, for the majority, most people don't like networking events because they find this back and forth lacking that genuine feeling and genuine. They kind of find it fake. And I want to share some conversation starters so you can actually have those deeper conversations and be the one leading the conversation. The first one is this. If you're in a room and you don't want to be in the crowd, what I want you to do is this. I want you to scout out and look for the people who look like they're hiding out, like you want to do in that moment, right? Whether you're an extrovert or introvert, ambivert, I want you to find that person and walk over to them, right? And I don't want you to say, hi, my name's Karen, or hi, my name's Sam, or hi, my name's Michelle. I want you to just lean into them and say, could I ask you a question? When you say, could I ask you a question? No one says, no, not at all. 99.9% of the time, the other person will say, sure. Then I want you to be honest. Do you actually want to be here? Or are you mandated to be here? Or did a friend invite you? Or did your workplace make you be here? And I promise you that often, almost always allows the other person to just calm down. You calm down, they kind of chuckle, and then they answer the question. And what I normally go back and forth with is, it sounds kind of formal. I say something like this. You don't have to lie to me. I won't tell anybody and then you go into, I'm here because I have to be, and I can't stand networking events. I want you to be yourself because when you are yourself, that's when we find genuine connections. That's when we become attractive, when we're real. So I want you to go to these events and stop lying. Stop lying. And you'll find when you're honest with the other person, all of a sudden you have something in common, especially if that person is lined up along the side of the room. I want you to be human. I want you to be interested in other people. That's when it's real. That's when it stops becoming heavy, right? The other piece is this. As you start that type of conversation, I want you to actively listen. And what I mean by actively listen is this. I want you to listen to the responses that the other person is sharing and saying. So instead of preempting what you think they're going to say or preparing your response in your head while they're talking, I need you to shut off that little brain, that little talking, that little voice in your head and listen to what they're saying. Because when you actively listen, what you do is you grab onto things that they've said and you ask a question based on how they responded to you. So if you ask that question, well, how far are you coming from and how long did it take you to get here? Well, I'm coming from Oakville and it took about an hour and 15 minutes, and it usually takes an hour, but traffic was really crappy today. Then what you heard was Oakville travel. There's a couple of things you could jump on based on what that person said, and you could create questions like, how long have you lived in Oakville? Or do you travel often from Oakville to Toronto? Or do you drive? Do you always drive in? Do you ever take public transit? Do you ever take the GO station? I want you to be interested in them. Be the one asking the questions. Actively listen. If you don't know how to start a conversation, you just need one good question that allows one good open-ended question that allows the other person to speak. And when that other person speaks, you're jumping on and you're grabbing something that they've said and ask them more. For example, now if you went down the line of going into the room, finding someone who's standing by themselves and leaning in and saying, can I ask you a question? Do you actually want to be here, or did your workplace make you be here? That little chuckle, they're going to answer the question. Like, you know what? I hate networking events. And this is my third this month, or I haven't been to a networking event since before COVID. And this is so uncomfortable for me. Then I want you to be human. I want you to be yourself. And I want you to ask yourself, are you in the same boat or a different boat? Because a conversation could continue and say, whew, this is so refreshing because I don't want to be here either. Then, once again, because you actively listened and they said they haven't been to a networking event since before COVID, you might go in and say, so you haven't been to a networking event since before COVID. Have you done any virtual stuff? And continue the conversation. Those are my tips for you. Networking does not have to be hard. It doesn't have to be stressful. So one, I want you to show up interested, not interesting. It does not have to be all about you. And if you make it about the other person, remember, you do not have to do all the talking. Number two, ask open-ended questions, not close-ended questions. And number three, I want you to actively listen. I want you to ask questions based on their answers. Then you're leading the conversation, but they are doing all the talking. My friends, networking does not have to be a stressful occasion. You can do it with ease. And the last thing I want to leave you with is this. When you feel like your time is done or your networking cap has been reached, you get to leave. It can be that simple. No one says that you have to stay for the whole event. My friends, thanks for joining me on my How to Master Networking in 12 minutes episode. This is just part one. So I will see you next time for part two.